This video will demonstrate how to use the Xfinity Xfi service to set bedtimes for certain devices, pause all users' devices, and set limits on screen time. The Xfinity Xfi service is only eligible for Xfinity subscribers who also have an Xfi wireless router. This happens to be the service that they're showcasing in their recent commercials. And if you're unsure if you have an Xfi capable router, you can call the Xfinity support number and talk to a customer service rep. In order to configure these settings, you'll want to first use a web browser to go to internet.xfinity.com. Again, that's internet.xfinity.com. When you first go to the website, you will be required to log in with your Xfinity username and password. I've already logged in, so when I go to the service, it automatically takes me to my dashboard. The dashboard here shows me which profiles I've already configured, and a quick summary of who's been the most active on the internet in the last 24 hours. In order to adjust settings, like setting bedtimes or limits on screen time, or to create a new profile, you'll want to go to the People tab. Within the People tab, it'll show you all of the profiles that you've created. You can see here I've actually already created profiles for some of my family members. In order to create a new profile, there's a button here in the top right corner to create a profile. When you click on that, it's going to ask you to set a name for that profile. I'm going to just use NW Owls. And it's going to ask you to choose an avatar. So I'm going to go and choose the owl there. When I click Create, it's going to show me a list of devices that are currently on my network or that have connected to my network. So even if the device isn't currently active, I can go here and I can choose something like this iPad and maybe this iPhone and assign it to that profile. So I'm going to go and click Assign. We're going to wait for this to finish. It says Profile Created and Device Assigned. I'm going to hit Close. And now here's my new profile, NW Owls. It shows me that there's 3 devices on this profile. It shows me the 3 devices, and currently 0 are connected. In order to set a restriction on a bedtime or screen time, I'm going to go ahead and click this More button next to the profile. So if I click More, it's going to take me into the settings for this profile. Again, it shows me which profile I'm in. I'm in the NW Owls profile. I can pause all of this user's devices right then and there. Or down here, I can change the bedtime or set an active time alert. I'm going to start off by setting a bedtime. So if I click Edit here, the first thing I can do is set a bedtime for school nights and weekend nights. So I'm going to start off by school nights and say, all right, I really don't want this user using their internet devices, let's say after 9 p.m. And maybe they get up early, so between 9 p.m. and 6:30 a.m., I no longer want this user using these devices. But on weekend nights, they're able to use their device until 11, and we'll set the wake-up time at 6:30 a.m. as well. So again, what this is going to do is between the hours of 9 p.m. and 6:30 a.m. on Sundays through Thursdays, the devices will all be paused, and the user will not be able to access internet during that time. And on weekend nights, that same restriction will apply between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6:30 a.m. If I hit Apply Changes, it's going to set the bedtime schedule for this user, and those settings will now appear here. The other thing I can do is set an active time alert, and this is basically a screen time. So it says set an alert to be aware of how long they're active on your home network. Choose a length of time and we'll notify you just before that time runs out. That way you can pause the device or you can find out why that user is using so much screen time. On weekdays, you can set that to whatever you'd like, anywhere between 30 minutes to 12 hours. Let's say I want to limit weekday internet use to 2.5 hours, but on the weekend days, I'll let them use 4 hours. And what will happen is you'll actually get an alert indicating when this user is starting to reach that time limit. I'm going to go ahead and hit Apply Changes. And it'll show me the active time alerts that are in place. This also has some parental controls. And if we hit edit there, we can turn on the parental controls. However, currently, you're not able to choose what types of sites are restricted. It simply just says the viewable content will be deemed appropriate for all ages. I've played around with this a little bit and haven't quite figured out exactly what they're filtering, but it does have this parental control option that you can choose to turn off or on. I'm going to go and leave it off for right now. And now that this profile is set up, you can see because it's actually after 9:30 as I'm creating this video, on school nights, the bedtime is 9 p.m. So it actually put this user in bedtime mode, and they're in bedtime mode until 6:30 a.m. If the user needs to be able to access their devices, you can just click this wake up, and it'll actually wake up their devices. So let's say they've got a big homework assignment due the next morning, they're going to be working late on it, and they need to use it past 9 p.m. I can click wake up, and this is going to unpause all of this user's devices, and then the bedtime mode will go into effect the following night. So I'm going to go ahead and hit wake up, and it will now wake up that device, and it tells me that there's 0 paused devices and 0. Right now, none of those devices are connected. But if the user's devices were connected, it would show how many devices were connected. Similarly, you can see here, I've actually got some bedtime settings set up for my kids where their devices at this point will not be available until 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. My son tends to get up a little bit earlier. So we have that functionality there, and I can see exactly which devices are in this bedtime mode. There's actually also a corresponding Xfi app that you can install on your phones so that you can actually adjust these settings directly from your phone rather than having to log into your laptop or your computer and turn these on. And there's been many times when my kids have come to me over winter break. For example, I didn't adjust these settings. They were up a little bit later and realized, oh, my devices are paused or I can't access the internet. And I was able to wake those devices up directly from my phone. That's essentially how you would go through and set up the settings for bedtimes and pausing and setting limits on screen time. Overall, I felt like the service has worked really well, and it's been fairly reliable, and it's given me just some more insight and control over when my kids get to access the internet and use their devices. One thing that's been really great is because my son's Xbox also uses the internet connection, when I set the bedtime for all the devices, that includes his Xbox, and I can also see how much time he's spending, on that particular device as well. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you very much.